When she became president of Cornhusker Bank in 1975, Alice Dittman made a radical break from the traditional role of wife and mother to boldly enter a realm dominated by men. The first women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. Today, women like Lisa Maupin and Sarah Thomas of Lincoln are still marching.
This is what democracy looks like!
Linda Garcia was born in Omaha, but English was her second language. Art became her third. On Nebraska Pathbreakers, women whose courage and tenacity have broken boundaries and moved the needle on change. Alice Dittman smashes barriers. In 1975, she stepped into a man's world when she became president of Cornhusker Bank in Lincoln. The first woman to do so in Lincoln and Omaha. She made it work. More recently, Alice was diagnosed with jaw cancer. But to know Alice, nothing seems to stop her. Not even cancer. Born to a banker father and a college-educated mother, Alice's story began October 1st, 1930.
One of my bad memories, where I misbehaved, was my first day of school. And my mother walked me to Randolph Elementary. It was just a half-day kindergarten. I met my mother coming to pick me up and walk me back home. Well, I was a big girl, and I wouldn't walk with her. She just laughed about it and walked behind me. You know, I was always thrifty, and my dad let me count the money in his billfold, and that was a good experience. You know, I mean, I don't know why I wanted to count it, but I did. So maybe it's in my genes a little bit, and being thrifty. But things like that are fun. It was a great way to grow up.
As both of her parents had a post-secondary education, it was only expected that Alice would attend college. In 1952, she graduated from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln with a degree in business.
I wouldn't have had the opportunities I had if I hadn't been a pretty good student. That's probably one of the reasons why I got the chance to go back east for a postgraduate year.
In 1952, the doors to Harvard's Graduate School of Business were closed to women. So Alice enrolled at Radcliffe, a women's college in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and was taught by Harvard business professors.
And it was Harvard's excuse for not admitting women to their business school. I had a great year, and I had the opportunity to learn a great deal being with girls that well, they were top students. You know, I mean, just experiences I couldn't have had in Nebraska at that time.
With her postgraduate year behind her, Alice was back in Nebraska working at the family bank. She married Mark Dittman in 1955. 1 year later, she earned a master's in finance and management at UNL, a degree not many men had at the time. Alice continued working until she gave birth to her first child in 1959. Then she did what women of the time did, Alice became a stay-at-home mom.
I wouldn't have wanted to be raised by anybody else, you know? I'm really proud of Mom. She's really done well.
Doug Dittman is the youngest of Alice's 3 children. He owns a restaurant in Lincoln and lives on a farm that once belonged to his grandfather.
It was fun. Mom and Dad had lots of friends, and you know, it was the 60s and early 70s, and they would have cocktail parties and luau's. People would sit around smoking cigarettes and talking about whatever.
Mark died in 1975, and he died of cancer. But you didn't think about it being hard, you just did it.
I know as a kid that we never missed a beat. We had a little powwow about what are we going to do.
And my kids were 11, 13, and 15. But I think maybe it made my kids a little more mature. You take things in steps, you know. It's amazing what you can accomplish.
Another big change came 3 months later in July, when Alice's father retired as president of Cornhusker Bank. When Alice assumed the helm at 45, she became the first woman to be president of a bank in Lincoln and Omaha.
She's always been a very, very strong person, and somebody who's very focused, but somebody also with a really big heart. And you look at her kids and you know that she did a great job with them.
In 1987, Ann Burkholder had already been turned down by other banks when she asked Alice for a business loan. A painter, Ann wanted to create a collaborative space where artists could live, work, and display their art. Today, it's known as the Burkholder Project.
The word got out that I was looking for a building, and this is kind of interesting because Alice Dittman called me one day and said, I have a building down here you need to look at. And she said, let's go have lunch. Alice is one of those people who are always looking out for the other person. I mean, here she is. She's a conservative banker, but she's got a really big heart. And helping other people, I think, were one of the major things that she does.
She's mentored many. As a boy on, I just remember a pretty kind of a steady stream of usually single women that would come to the house. And either the husband, they were divorced or the husband died, and what am I going to do? Because the women didn't know the finances.
It's an important part of our bank, trying to get people out of debt and not keep them in debt.
As president of Cornhusker Bank, Alice led the path in adopting new electronic banking technology. She started a job-sharing program to help working mothers. She expanded bank assets from $8 million to $235 million. While running the bank and being a single parent, Alice accepted leadership roles in other organizations and continues to be active in the Lincoln community.
She was so darn capable, you know. She was just the smartest person in the room and the most capable person in the room. And I think, you know, she could be very mannish, which she probably had to be in that era. I think Alice, in many ways, she's kind of like, I mean, clearly she's a woman, but kind of genderless in terms of interests and capacity and ability. Gender really, it's almost like it didn't have anything to do with it.
She's just a very strong woman. Strong and with a big heart and with perseverance, endurance, and very intelligent. But the big heart is the best thing of all.
So I think it's hard to be that person, you know, to be that capable. And I think she just had to go right to the top because you just couldn't stop her. It's just kind of like a force of nature. I've just started maybe having an upper hand in ping pong. She is a fierce competitor.
That's all right, I like that.
I'm not taking her on in ping pong ever.
To this day, if you're going to win at ping pong, you have to completely focus and put all your effort into it and just be kind of ruthless to win. But she expects that. And she would not be satisfied with anything less.
Nice, good, very good.
She's fearless.
Me,
To this day, it's like, oh my gosh, where's she going to drive to? You know.
Alice has thrived on the road less traveled.
I like this.
Mom, how was your ping pong match?
It was great. Your son did so well, but I almost beat him.
The far distant horizons represent the future. Like, where are you going? What is your horizon? How are you going to get there? What road are you going to pick? But some of my paintings are representative of where are you going? What are you seeing off in the distance? What are you planning out there? I think that same thing happens to Alice. I don't know that she puts it in those kind of words, but I think she's always looking for something new to do. She's not just sitting there spinning her wheels. She's always looking at the future.
I really don't know what created Alice. I really don't. Like I said, I think it's just like a bolt of lightning. I'm really glad she was able to express her unique abilities in the world. She is the kind of person who smashes through barriers. I'm really glad that she was that person and able to do that, and that she encouraged so many other women.
You chose the right side. Opportunities are there if you look for them. And that's what I'm trying to instill in the grandkids. And so far I'm doing well. Fine.
Good game.
Good game.
Well done. Okay.
Thank you.
One year after the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, American women lost their right to vote. In the mid-19th century, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Motts formed a protest movement for women's rights. American women risked jail and were jailed as they demonstrated in the streets. With the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, American women could vote again. 100 years later, women are still on the march for equality.
I believe that we go win.
One of my most prevalent memories, early childhood, was being invited in the backyard with my brother and father to play catch. And I remember my brother, and it, of course, is quite inappropriate to say things like, don't throw like a girl. But I remember that phrase coming from him and how earnest I was to not.
I think women have been conditioned by society, and growing up I maybe was as well, to defer to men or kind of hide the stronger opinions. And I don't think men do that. I don't think men are conditioned to do that.
In January, Sarah Thomas and Lisa Maupin traveled with a group of Nebraska women to Washington, D.C. to attend the Women's March.
I think we need to show also there are certain things that we're still battling and still we find challenging or not acceptable. This is a great way in which we can show support and also maybe get our voices heard. I think anytime we have a chance to be at the table and have a bigger part of the table, I think it's a great thing.
Around the 2016 election, my daughter and I decided to go to the Women's March in DC. It was fabulous to see marches, all over the nation, all over the world. Going to the Women's March was one of many things that we thought would be, if nothing else, helpful in feeling some solidarity.
I also think it's never a bad thing. It's always a good thing to get out of your place and your space and your geographical home, and then to go and experience something that's bigger than you and also that's not part of your world. I think anytime you can do that, it only betters you as a person, as a human. I feel like going to this march, I can come home hopeful, and that's what I need. This is why I go to the march.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what
I'm marching today for women and women's rights.
We women have to stick together.
I'm marching for peace, equality, and justice, and to restore democracy.
I'm marching for a better world for my daughter.
And I'm marching because I have grandchildren, and I want their world to be better than the world that exists right now.
And we are here to fight for women's rights, baby! Woo!
This is a peaceful way to go out and say, look, we have a voice and it counts, and it should count. And so we need our voices to be heard. We need a place at the table.
The youngest woman in Congress.
There will be a much bigger infrastructure in place that will encourage marchers to become even more engaged locally and nationally on the subjects that we're marching about. Much more serious in terms of leveraging our power to effect change.
I think to say to a young woman, tell people what you think. Don't apologize. Be loud, just be who you feel you are.
When they're calling your name and trying to hang you up, keep moving, keep moving, keep...
Be that, be strong, be heard. Hopefully this march and marches like this will have played a role. I think that they will.
I believe that we go win. I believe that we go win.
A graduate of the College of St. Mary, Linda Garcia Perez had a long career as a children's librarian for Omaha Public Library. There, she not only encouraged children's curiosity, but also their creativity. Linda is also an artist, and it is through her art that she has and continues to celebrate her Chicana heritage. It was a flame that was ignited in her last year of college during a visit to her grandparents' homeland.
I picked Mexico, of course, so I went and stayed there, scared to death. And I got off the airport and says, oh my gosh, I've never seen so many Mexicans in my whole life. And I saw art everywhere. So I started looking up a lot of the myths and legends of Mexico. And that's how I became a storyteller as well as an artist. And you wouldn't believe that I wouldn't talk when I was younger.
A second-generation American, Linda was born in Omaha and raised in a family of 10 children. Her mother worked, and so Linda spent most of her time with her immigrant grandparents. Spanish was spoken at home, so when Linda began school, she struggled with English. But in that struggle, Linda found her unique voice in the world.
And I start crying, she would say, what? I got a stupid teacher. She doesn't know anything. I'm in real trouble. I'm never going to learn. I went up to my teacher the next day. I slammed that apple down, a manzana apple. And I had for breakfast avena, oatmeal, leche, milk. And I felt so smart. And I went and sat down and I thought, I'm smarter than the teacher because I speak 2 languages and see the world differently. So I knew the power of words then.
Though she struggled with English, Linda excelled in creativity. Art became a language that helped her build friendships.
All the girls had these fancy paper dolls. We couldn't afford them. Our money was super tight. I started making my own paper dolls. Eventually I had to make dolls for everybody. And I taught them how to make the clothes and how to trace it. So they put away all their dolls and ended up making paper dolls with me.
After graduating high school in 1964, Linda studied art at the College of St. Mary. She was the first college graduate in her family. During her trip to Mexico as a young woman, she discovered the brilliant, colorful art of her heritage.
That one exposure changed my course, changed who I am completely. Because of my education and the way I had looked at life, I saw far away that I had choices as a woman.
Then, back in America, Linda learned about a civil rights movement for Mexican Americans. It was called the Chicano movement.
Chicano philosophy to me means you learn about this environment, you learn about other people that are in your culture and your heritage, but you teach it and you share it. That's why I call myself a Chicana, because it's self-determination. You know, you can't wait for people to hand you stuff.
She was confident. She carried herself in a very, almost aloof way, but it wasn't phony. And then one day, I said, let's go out. And I fell in love.
A chance meeting turned into a lifelong commitment between a very independent-minded Linda and Jose.
I wasn't going to get married. I made up my mind. I dislike the quote when people say, oh, my husband allows me to do this. What do you mean he allows you to do this? What does that mean? Allows me. You couldn't do it if he said no? Not in my house.
She always produced who she was in her art. So Linda as a woman, as a human being, was almost a mystery, but when you saw her art, pow, it was all there.
As a librarian, Linda knew words transformed thought. As a workshop teacher, she fosters understanding through knowledge. And as an artist, she uses creativity to bridge cultures.
When I saw Linda do Mexicanism as a born-in-the-wool American, a Mexican American, a Chicana, it just blew my mind. Wow. And even though I see Mexican there, I see Chicano there, but I see something that's very American.
Growing up, I learned that paper was made from plants and trees. So I'm really dealing with a living thing. And I like that idea of working with a living thing that was once alive.
She's doing more paper art than ever before. She turned paper into magic.
For Linda, creativity is like breathing. And for those women who follow her, she believes the key to moving through difficulty rests with accepting the challenge, but not defeat.
And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to not know where you're going. But as long as you're going.
These Nebraska Pathbreakers are moving the needle on change. They see the world for how it is and hope to leave it better.
You are where you need to be, just like today. You are where you need to be.